Hey, how are y'all doing? It's April 28th, 2020, and you're watching Connor's Comment. Today we're going to be talking about free freedoms and the right rights that all of us want, but also don't mind when they're disappearing. Something not a lot of Canadians realize is that our Charter of Rights and Freedoms don't really give us all of the rights and freedoms we think we're getting. The Canadian Charter only allows what is considered reasonable in the execution of our rights and freedoms. Nothing is absolute. The issue lies with who determines what's reasonable and what's not. Now, you might be saying in this situation, of course, like this is very reasonable. We need to have ourselves protected during the time of a pandemic. But maybe it's a step too far and we can still get the same protection without having to give up all of these freedoms. We can't travel anymore. We can't go between province and province. That's our freedom of movement right there. That's a reasonable restriction, and it might be for this situation. But nonetheless, we need to be able to question whether the government's doing the right thing for us always. It's not just a free-for-all whenever something bad happens. And this is, again, something bad that's happened. We need to analyze exactly how much we're willing to give away and in exchange for what. So there's lots of restrictions that can be placed on you, but they're considered reasonable. We've taken this a tad too far. Police have discretion. They're allowed to choose on their best judgment who they think should be subject to the force of the law and who shouldn't. We need our police to be free-thinking people a lot of the time. There's little issues with that where two friends in Montreal were distributing flyers. I'm not really sure about what, but nonetheless, you know, it's their freedom of expression. They can hand out flyers for whatever they want. They're actually using sticks to hand things to people so they could just grab the papers and go, and it's the passerbuyer's decision to grab a piece of paper. They were given a $1,200 ticket. Technically, they weren't breaking any social distancing laws. Since they weren't doing something that's deemed essential, freedom of expression isn't deemed essential, they can receive a $1,200 fine, which is kind of fucked up if you ask me. To me, it doesn't really matter what the pamphlets are about. It's just the fact that they have the right to hand out those pamphlets. If it was something along the lines of challenging the government restrictions, and then they get a $1,200 fine, a little bit of a police state sort of thing, where people can't disseminate free information to the public without the fear of being ticketed. It's something that we need to think about, challenging it when we need to, and when not in every instance it is reasonable to do, but the government's deemed it to be reasonable. So coming back to section 1 of that guy. And we're back. So now we need to think about, maybe we don't like some of the stuff that's going on, but there's still a virus out there waiting to get you. You don't want to be like these guys right here saying COVID-19 is a lie. And we don't want to be like them. There's still good ways that we can kind of challenge some of the things that are happening without just doing that, but it wouldn't be America if that wasn't happening. As much as I love America, it happened here too. So this economist put out an article saying that the way that we're dealing with COVID-19 might not be the best way to do it. Everybody just staying inside, everybody, you know, staying away from those non-essential jobs. How we prevent every single sickness from happening. And nobody gets COVID-19. But the reality is that that's not really feasible. The approach taken by like Sweden might be a little bit better. Basically, 1/3 of the jobs in the US can be done from home. We can't expect a vaccine to be developed anytime soon. Are we just gonna accept the fact that we're stuck inside? The virus is just not gonna go away. If we look at Sweden, the Swedish government has kept schools, restaurants, and other businesses open while limiting large gatherings and encouraging the elderly to isolate to see relatively low-risk young population become gradually infected and thus achieve herd immunity and minimal economic disruptions. If we let who aren't really at risk get sick, then there's a good chance that, you know, just as a population we'd be able to fight the disease, right? That's the only way we fought disease for millions of years up until the advent of vaccines. There's a good point to be made that, you know, we can't just shut down for a year and a half. It's not feasible just to stay inside and make this our new way of life. Expecting that some people will be getting sick, but then making sure that those people who are likely to get sick are separated from the ones that are likely to to get sick and die. It may be desirable to adopt a milder, more sustainable measure so we can do it for longer rather than going like super hard at the start and then just pulling ourselves right out of it, or just like a very slow trickle out of it. We just kind of maintain a baseline amount of separation that's doable up until a vaccine is developed for the people who are willing to take vaccines. But without like really disrupting our way of life as much as possible. No big gather, no unreasonable amount of contact with people. Expect the fact that, you know, we're gonna get sick and there's people that will obviously survive, and then make us stronger for a natural herd immunity. Encouraging hygiene, discouraging large gatherings, targeted isolation of the elderly and underlying conditions, keeping economic life as normal as possible. 9 out of 5, widespread testing. Every single person that comes in with any symptoms related to this virus gets tested, and then you trace it back to where they most likely got it from once testing is available. But for the time being, you know, these are reasonable precautions. So just as I'm about to finish this video, I see that Sweden isn't really doing so hot. A ton of news articles coming out on the 30th, or day before anyways, saying that Sweden's plan really wasn't the best, and they have a super high death rate right now. Still too early to say, but nonetheless, I'd feel disingenuous if I didn't mention the fact that there's a lot of criticism around Sweden right now. Kind of keep things going while still keeping people safe, right? We're not doing that. You know, COVID-19's not real. Let's avoid the big baseball games, but still have baseball on. Like, let's get the players on the field, let people watch from home. Let's teach people how to fucking wash their hands. Now time to talk about where our true frustration should be directed towards. That man. Not necessarily the governments of Canada or the US. They're doing a pretty good job for the most part. They're keeping us safe. But the ones who don't care about keeping us safe, let alone anybody safe, China. The Chinese government, the CCP. The only thing that the Chinese government cares about is maintaining the Chinese government. And we've seen that. They don't really care about the death toll as long as they maintain power over their people. But talking about the disease that we're dealing with today, right? It came out of China. Everybody knows that. Was it the Chinese government's fault? You know, there's conspiracy theories going around that there was a base right by the starting point for the disease working on this virus and it escaped and blah, blah, blah. I don't believe any of that. Some of you may. Did it just happen by chance of circumstance? Because of the wet markets don't exactly coincide with what we think of as normal in the West. That might be all well and good, but I don't really believe in eating any animal for that matter. You know, not a good thing. So the virus emerged sometime in November. Doctors talking about it late December. Dr. Li Wenliang, he was arrested for reporting the virus to friends. He was made to sign a document saying that he would not dispel any more rumors. And basically what he was saying, you guys should be careful, right? Talking to his friends. They found him immediately and told him to basically shut up. When he said that, like, oh, you know, we should probably keep an eye open for this kind of thing. It's not very good. He ended up dying of the disease shortly afterwards. The ultimate irony. But nonetheless, his story got out there. And if they're doing something like that, silencing a doctor who's talking about a virus, then we can safely say that the Chinese government cares about themselves more than they do their people, sadly. Then January 18th, risk for human-to-human transmission is reported as low. So not a big deal. What kind of escalates all of this is this was right around the Chinese Lunar New Year, the largest migration of people in the entire world. There's more than 3 billion travels to a whole bunch of different places, but they still place no restrictions on any movement, even out of Wuhan, after knowing about this SARS-like virus. And then not until February 13th, Wuhan is locked down completely. China has such huge implication on the rest of the world and how the rest of the world functions right now that we can't forget about this kind of stuff. We have to kind of keep it in the back of our heads whenever we're upset about our way of life right now. It's because they tried to hide the fact that they could not contain this virus and did not seek outside help because China doesn't want to look weak, spreads to the rest of the world. We'll conclude on this note. It's time to start thinking on a more local scale rather than the international scale. Sure, we can, grab our Xi Jinping, pull him in close, lock lips with him, let him know we love him, give him a little bit of our cash, buy some of his products. But from a moral standpoint, is it the best idea to support a country like that? For myself, I'm gonna start making a bit of a change, buying locally. I know I bought this hat on Amazon, but wouldn't it be ironic? This hat was made in China. So it's time to start thinking a little bit different about the way we live our lives. I'm going to, and I hope you do too. Thanks. So like, comment, subscribe. Let me know what you think. See you soon. This was Connor's Comment. Like, comment, subscribe.